Okay, now we are looking at an ECG, which stands for electrocardiogram. You will only find depolarization and repolarization within the waves. You will not find depolarization or repolarization within any of the segments or the intervals. The first wave of an ECG is the P wave. This wave is responsible for atrial depolarization and usually lasts about 0.08 seconds. The second wave is the QRS complex. This wave is responsible for ventricular depolarization, and this wave usually lasts about 0.08 seconds. The last wave is the T wave, which is responsible for ventricular repolarization, and this wave lasts 0.16 seconds. The QRS complex is responsible for ventricular depolarization. However, the atrials still contract and they still undergo atrial depolarization. However, since the ventricles are so thick and so strong, they actually override the atrias, and atrial depolarization is actually hidden within this complex. It's actually embedded in here just because the ventricles overpower the atrias. So we actually cannot see the atrias contract. However, they're still contracting within the QRS complex. Okay, so there are two segments within the ECG. A segment is an end of one wave and the beginning of another. The first segment is the PR segment. This segment starts at the end of the P wave and the beginning of the R wave. The second segment is the ST segment. This segment starts at the end of the S wave and the beginning of the T wave. An interval actually houses the wave. There are two intervals, the PR interval and the QT interval. The atrials actually contract for 1 second after the P wave begins. Okay, so now I'm going to start from the beginning and show you or tell you how the waves actually go through the heart. Okay, so first of all, the SA node fires the impulse and spreads it to the atrias. The atrias then depolarize and we then see the P wave. From the atrias, the impulse goes to the AV node. As you know, the AV node actually holds on to the impulse. The impulse then arrives at the bundle of His. As you know, the bundle of His actually goes downwards towards the apex of the heart. The Purkinje fibers then receive the impulse and then spread it to the ventricles. As the Purkinje fibers receive the impulse and spread it to the ventricles, we actually see this wave here, which is the QRS complex, spreading the impulse to the ventricles from the Purkinje fibers. The ventricles then finish depolarizing and then start to repolarize. This leads us to a plateau, which is the ST segment. This is actually a transition. So ventricles finish depolarizing and then start to repolarize. Start to repolarize. This is called the ST segment. Then we get to the T wave, which is where the ventricles start to repolarize. So that is an ECG.